Today's video is all about bringing you guys the newest Korean builds so that you can abuse them in your games. There's actually been a lot of role diversity in new builds coming out, so we have at least one champion for every role. So smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. First up, we're going to be starting with a new Ezreal build. Comboing this new build with the recent buffs that he got on 10.3, and you're looking at a very strong champion. For the runes on this new Ezreal build, you're going to want to take Lethal Tempo, Presence of Mind, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, and Cosmic Insight. The whole point of this rune build is to get Ezreal scaling and make him have a not so weak early game. He used to lack a lot of attack speed, especially if he was missing abilities, but now Lethal Tempo, his attack speed buffs, and Legend Alacrity will allow you to make up for that pretty well. So you'll be stronger in the early game and stronger in the late game, especially with that Presence of Mind mana. We've also seen some players experiment with Press the Attack and Conqueror, however neither of those have the performance of Lethal Tempo. They might be good in certain specific matchups, but Lethal Tempo is the best all around by far. But enough about runes, let's get into the new items. We see a shift back to an AD focused Ezreal build. A lot of the times, Ezreal recently has been building items like Gunblade or Ludens and doing more magic damage overall. However, now we're moving back to things like Blade of the Ruined King. So now your items are gonna look more like a Manamune, Ionian Boots, Triforce, Blade of the Ruined King, Mortal Reminder, and Maw of Malmortius. And just to be absolutely clear, those two last items can definitely change. Mortal Reminder is very good against teams who have high healing, however if they don't, you are much better off going for a Lord Dominic's Regards. And the same thing happens for Maw. If they have a lot of magic damage, Maw is great, but if they don't, you could go something even more damage and survivability oriented like Death Stance. That will make you incredibly hard to kill. Next up, we've got something that just should not exist. However, it is one of the strongest things in the game right now. We're talking about solo lane Soraka. It's only a matter of time before this gets absolutely blasted into the floor, so make sure you take advantage of it now. She is equally as effective in both top lane and mid lane. In terms of runes, you're not actually deviating that much. You're going to want to take Airy, Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. Bone Plating is essential to making sure that you take less damage in all of the trades that you get yourself into, and just resist that burst damage from a lot of the laners who are going to be trying to abuse you. And of course, Revitalize is very important as it helps your healing and shielding across your entire team. That is not a small thing that you can ignore, especially when you consider how much it empowers your ultimate, which already gets bonuses when your allies are low. Specifically, taking Mana Flow and Transcendence in the sorcery tree will help you scale and get mana and mana regeneration as the game goes on. Scorch is just annoying, however it's not that amazing, but you will notice it when you start poking your enemies with your Q, hitting them with Airy, and Scorch over and over again. That's why you take it. Soraka can easily proc it every single time it's off cooldown. The most important piece of advice about playing Soraka solo lane is that it's not your job to kill your opponent. If you can, cool, go for it, but that's not your job. Your job is to farm and make sure that you can get those super powerful items that turn you into an absolute monstrous support. Soraka solo lane isn't about doing damage, it's about making sure that you and your entire team never die ever. Speaking of the items, let's list those off for you guys. Usually you're going to be looking for an Athene's first item. It gives you regeneration, some magic resist, and ability power, which just helps you all around in your laning. Then you go Ionian Boots, Redemption, Mikael's, Shirelia's, and Rabadon's. This is a smattering of support items that give you a lot of healing and utility for your team. You have the ability to cleanse some CCs, AoE healing on top of your already ridiculous AoE healing ulti, and movement speed and AP for more damage and healing, and it's amazing. You get so much out of these items. Remember, when you're playing Soraka like this, your main goal is to never die, because if you don't die, your opponents cannot snowball a lead on you, and that is very crucial to how you play out the rest of the game. Now, we've spoken about how Soraka solo lane should not exist. Now we have the opposite scenario, where Swain was designed to be a solo laner, but now he's a ridiculous support. Those 200 plus years combined of design experience doesn't seem to be helping Riot out very much right now. Swain support is very much a mage support. You aren't there to just help enable your team, you are actually a very serious damage dealer, and your runes and items are going to reflect that. In terms of runes, you're looking at Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Perfect Timing, and Biscuits. Anytime you ever land your E in lane, your Electrocute should be going off, the Cheap Shot is gonna go off, and if you're getting a kill because of that, the Eyeball Collection and the Ultimate Hunter are gonna stack up. This is how you're trying to cascade your rune effects together. It works together really well. Remember, when you're playing this, you're going to want to throw your E and then place your W in front of your enemy when the E is about to hit them. That way you can pull them right into it as soon as it's about to detonate. And what you're building in the early game very specifically revolves around this idea. You'll be taking Spell Thieves, which will eventually upgrade itself into a Shard of True Ice. And then from there, you'll take Moby Boots, Zhonya's, Liandry's, Bramble Vest, and Stoneplate. Now this is a very interesting and creative item build that we see from somebody who actually mains Swain in the support role. So let's quickly talk about that Bramble Vest first. So Bramble Vest is a very interesting item. You are reflecting damage from auto attacks back at your attacker. However, the key is that they do magic damage. And do you know what that means? The Liandry's effect will proc on anybody who basic attacks you. Simply put, this is absolutely amazing. You are getting free damage for doing absolutely nothing but getting your face slapped. Now again, it's important to point out that this is only a Bramble Vest. It's not a Thornmail, and that has a reason. This is because later on in the game, you're going to want to sell it. At that point, Rylai's is going to be a much better buy for you. The health, ability power, and the slow will be better overall than just giving yourself a Liandry's proc hero there on some enemies that are out of your reach. Having the Rylai's to be able to catch them and then keep them in is more important. Also, he doesn't waste all the gold on building a full defensive item, and he's going to be building a lot more offensive items instead. But if he's building so much damage and really only has Zhonya's, how can he afford to do that? Well, the answer lies in the Stoneplate and specifically the Ultimate Hunter rune. Swain, whenever he ultimates, doubles the health that he gained from his passive during the time that it's active. And the ultimate is active for 12 seconds, which is a very long time. And if he ever has a problem during that time, he can always use his Zhonya's. But if he doesn't want a Zhonya's and he needs to stay mobile, the Stoneplate is yet another option. By the way, both Zhonya's and Stoneplate are affected by the perfect timing buff, and that makes them even lower cooldown. So if he just wants to move around, annoy people, make them get reflected damage, and constantly Liandry's proc them while never dying, that's what the combo of his ultimate plus Stoneplate plus Zhonya's allows him to do, and that makes him incredibly irritating, lets him fill two roles at once of both damage and tank, and just makes it incredibly effective. In other words, play this thing in your games. It's crazy good. And if you are actually trying to bring these builds and champions into your games, then I highly recommend you guys check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons and tons of champion-specific guides, and even if you aren't looking for that, we have guides on generic laning and basic skills too. There's something up there for you. Everything that we have is made by challenger-level players, and we're always trying to make more and better content. That way you guys can stay at your A-game and keep up to date with every single patch so that you guys can destroy your games. Next up is a pretty crazy build for Jarvan, and this is up there with Soraka top and mid levels of ridiculous. We're looking at Jarvan support. And let's just lay out the items and runes first and get to the explanation afterwards. And before I get into that, let me just preface this by saying, I know you're gonna think I'm a troll, but I'm not. This is absolutely serious. And even when I'm saying that, I can't help but laugh because it's just so crazy, but it's so strong. You are looking at Jarvan support with Airy, Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch, Perfect Timing, and Biscuits. And then item-wise, you're looking at Spell Thieves to get a Shard of True Ice, Moby's, Zhonya's, Ardent, Zeke's Convergence, and Redemption. Now, I'm sure we've all seen those meme builds where people build AP Jarvan support or AP Jarvan mid, and they hit really hard with their E flag toss. That's where this build originated from. So let's explain how it works. When you throw your Jarvan E, your ally will be buffed by Airy, and they will receive a shield. If you hit an enemy, obviously Airy will go hit the enemy first, but then he'll travel back to you, and when he gets to you, because you're buffing the attack speed of everybody in range, your nearest ally is going to get an Airy shield, and this can happen up to 3 times per flag toss, and that is incredible. And we're just talking about the area effect. We're not even talking about how important the attack speed is in terms of fighting enemy bot lanes. That is absolutely monstrous, like no joke. It's more than any rune can give at every rank. It's ridiculous. And then you still retain the fact that Jarvan is a great initiator. With his EQ combo, he has knock-up CC, he has a slow and a self-shield on his W, and his ultimate can still lock people down, and this is why the build is the way it is. Spell Thieves is just gonna help you in lane, and Moby's is pretty standard for supports. But Zhonya's allows you to initiate without dying every single time. The Athene's combos with your already absurd attack speed buff from your E for even more, and then on top of that, you can get a redemption later on in the game to buff your entire team in that matter, and the Zeke's convergence will make your AD carry who's hitting faster hit even harder. Hopefully you're starting to see why this is actually not troll and incredibly powerful. It also has some really unique strategies that you can do in terms of double jungling, but it's a bit weird and really only effective in high elo, so we're gonna leave that out. But I wanted to mention it because you might see people try and do it in your game when they're smurfing. If you do notice that the enemy has a Jarvan support and they're not in lane, they're probably helping their jungler, so you're gonna want to try and get your team to invade the enemy jungle. That's how you put a stop to that plan. Alright, that was a lot of crazy stuff, but we're still not done. We've got a couple more builds, however they aren't as wacky as AP Jarvan support. So let's get into Syndra. Syndra runes are still pretty standard. You're going to want to take Electrocute, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Mana Flow, and Transcendence. Not much different there at all. However, the items, and specifically the first item, is where things get a little wacky. So, even though you aren't taking Glacial Augment, GLP is an incredibly powerful first item on Syndra. That is because if you land a GLP bolt, Syndra's QE becomes impossible to dodge if you don't have mobility. This is incredibly strong. If you can't dodge the stun, you're just gonna die to her follow-up, and that is really annoying. At the same time, it makes her even safer against champions who chase her down. She was already good enough with her E to shove people away and when using it with the Q to stun, but now she can't miss it when she's doing it aggressively, and she doesn't even need to use it defensively, so she can just kill you anytime she wants pretty much. And that's what allows her to go a much more offensive build of GLP, Sork Shoes, Rabadons, then Banshees, Liandry, and Void Staff. You don't need to get any sort of defensive items in terms of Zhonya's or even Banshees until much later because it's not as much of a threat and you can just destroy people whenever you want, assuming that you have the GLP off cooldown. Again, this is a relatively simple change in terms of just changing what first item you build. Instead of Ludens, you get GLP, but the amount of effectiveness is really important to point out. And it's really going to be a trend, I think, where a lot of control mages who have important skill shots will be buying GLP even if they don't take Glacial Augment, because being able to land them 100% of the time is very powerful. Now, for those of you who've been playing League for quite some time, this one's gonna be a throwback. We're seeing Zac top lane. The big difference is that the runes here are very odd. We're looking at Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand, Second Wind, and Revitalize. Specifically, what's strange is that Precision Tree. You wouldn't think of Zac as a tank who does some magic damage as a champion who wants to take Conqueror. However, it's really just doubling down on his strength of healing. He manages to take Second Wind and Revitalize second for extra healing and sustain over the laning phase, and then you combo that increased healing and regeneration with the Conqueror healing when it's fully stacked up. On top of that, Zac's W has a very low cooldown, especially when you're picking up Bloblets, and his damage isn't that bad either. Plus, there's a lot of good AP items that he can itemize to give him a little bit extra damage if he feels like he needs it. So your first items are going to look pretty standard. You're looking at Sunfire, Tabby, Spirit Visage, and Thornmail. Obviously, your priorities are going to change. If the enemy team has more magic damage, you're probably going to want to build Spirit Visage first. But aside from that, items like Thornmail, Zhonya's, and Rylai's are very powerful on him. Earlier we spoke about Thornmail being able to trigger the Liandry's burn because it does magic damage, and the same is true for Rylai's. If you build this exact item build on Zac, you will be incredibly hard to kill when facing physical damage threats, and you'll be able to slow people who are attacking you from range for free, and that is a very powerful effect. On top of that, the Zhonya's invulnerability is super useful and can save you in some scenarios. Of course, let's not forget to mention that the Zhonya's and the Rylai's both give Zac stats that he wants, in terms of tankiness with health or armor, and the ability power is always nice for getting his W more percentage health magic damage. Alright, we've got 2 more to go. First up, let's talk about Bard. Now, Bard is one of those champions who really could probably just build any item in the game and do fine. But this specific build focuses on targeting Bard's weakness in the current meta, where he is normally very squishy. The runes are going to be pretty much the same as before, except you're taking Resolve secondary here no matter what. You're looking at Electrocute, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Relentless Hunter, Bone Plating, and Overgrowth. No Water Walking or Celerity here, unfortunately. But don't worry, because there's something that makes up for those missing runes worth of movement speed. You're going to be taking Spell Thief's Edge so that you can get a Shard of True Ice, Mobies, and then either Deadmans or Athenes depending on what you need. If you need some magic resist, a little bit more damage, and a little bit more healing, you can go Athenes, or if your only goal is to not die and be fast, Deadmans is the item for you. Then after that, you can buy yourself something like a Knight's Vow and a Redemption to help support your team, give healing, and reduce the amount of damage that everybody across the board is taking. Because you, who has a lot more health now because of this different build, will be able to soak up just that much more for your team. But let's say your team doesn't quite need you to pull that Knight's Vow and Redemption out of your pocket. Well, then you could focus on building something more damage oriented. You could go something like Leandri's and then Rapid Fire Cannon, which can lead to some hilarious results in damage. And for our very last champion, we're going to be looking at Graves. Now, Graves hasn't been particularly good for quite some time now. However, he is making a little bit of a comeback using Hail of Blades right now. Your runes are going to be obviously Hail of Blades, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, and Absolute Focus. This is aimed at giving you the best clear possible while giving you movement speed and abilities to kite and damage your enemies greatly in short fights. You are heavily relying on the Hail of Blades though, because your build is looking a bit different than it has in the past. You're looking at a full lethality build where you're going Skirmishing Warrior, Tabby or Merc Treads, Duskblade, Yumu's, Edge of Night, and Lord Dominic's Regards. And again, another item could also sneak its way into your build. Say you don't need the spell shield from Edge of Night, or you feel like that Duskblade isn't really going to be very useful. Umbral Glaive fixes one of Graves' most core problems. He has so much trouble killing wards, but that just allows you to insta-kill them, makes your vision control incredibly strong, and then therefore allows you to play up in your enemy's face in their jungle, constantly remove their vision, and constantly harass them. And that is really, really good if you're in an advantageous matchup. So if you think that Duskblade isn't going to be very useful, and you think that you're going to be able to power over your enemy, then go for an Umbral Glaive instead. Also, something that you must avoid doing when you're playing Graves with Hail of Blades is using your E to load one extra bullet in your gun. Unless you were starting with one, this is absolutely the wrong move to make. That is because Graves' reload speed is directly tied to his attack speed, and you want the Hail of Blades attack speed to affect your reload. So what you want to do is shoot your enemy once, then twice, you're gonna go into reload, and you'll still have the bonus attack speed, and then you can use your E for a fourth bullet. This is the best way to utilize this rune on Graves. And that is all the brand new Korean builds that we have for you guys today. If you're trying to learn how to play these or learn the champions, or you're just looking to improve, make sure that you check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons of guides up there on everything that you could possibly need. We're always looking to make more and better content with our challenger level content creators. So if there does happen to be something missing that you think is really important, let us know. That way we can get to making content on it right away to keep you guys at your A game and winning. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. What do you guys think of these builds? Honestly, I'm just looking forward to the day that Soraka solo lane is gone, and hopefully AP Jarvan support stays around, because double jungling is actually really fun. Anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.